Hey everyone, and welcome to the Atomic Cinema Experiment, aka the ACE. This is our sci-fi movie podcast. I am Pierre, and I am joined, as always, by the otherworldly Tara.
Greetings, citizens.
I'm going to try and do a thing where I think of a different way to describe you every single episode. So,
Otherworldly.
so
I like that one.
They sound normal right now. I feel like by the time we get to about episode 30, they're going to start being really silly. So I'm warning you right now. So we talk about sci-fi movies on this show, and on this episode we are going to be looking at a film from 1961. It is called The Day the Earth Caught Fire. So that's what we're going to talk about. We'll start off spoiler free, as we always do, and we'll give you warnings somewhere in the middle before we jump any spoilers. And yeah, so that's what's going to happen. Yeah. So you hadn't seen this either before?
No.
Yeah.
I had no idea what this was.
Yeah, I'd never seen this. I'd heard of it a while ago, and it's something that's been sort of on my periphery for a long time, and it was something I threw on the schedule because I was like, oh, I see that, I see what it is.
How did you hear about it? Do you remember?
I think this was something I actually saw a review of the DVD when it came out a long time ago.
Okay.
So we're talking like over 10 years ago, because this was like before Blu-rays were a thing.
Right.
Because I
was just curious, because this seems like a movie that, I don't know, it was totally off my radar.
Yeah, I don't know what about it stuck out to me. I just remember the premise sounded kind of interesting, that it was like, the only thing I knew about this was that it focused on people on newspaper as the world was kind of ending or something like that, which isn't exactly accurate. Is basically there's been some nuclear tests, and they've resulted in the Earth's climate changing, and it's the ramping up of the effects throughout the movie of that. I don't want to reveal exactly what it does, because there's some reveals later on about the specific things that it's caused, but I'll save that for spoilers. But it's all about uncovering the mystery and looking into what's happening and why the weather's getting warmer and why so on and so on. And we follow this character named Pete Stanning, who is this kind of disgruntled newspaper man who's used to be a great writer but isn't really anymore. Ever since his divorce, he can't see his kid that much. He's a bit of a drunk, and the movie is largely about him getting the will to live again. In a lot of ways, and the will to like be good at his job again and actually be finding his passion again. But it's a love story. And there's a bit of a love story in there, because it's the 60s and they had to have a love story as well.
Yeah.
So that is the general premise. Tara, did you enjoy, and what did you think of The Day the Earth Caught Fire?
I did, actually, surprisingly. It took a little while before I was getting into it, but as the movie overall, looking at it, yeah, I definitely recommend this one. I thought it was quite enjoyable. What about you?
Do you know, you're the only person, because I always asked Tim like what he thought of the movie, right? And I sometimes ask Connor on some of the TV pilots. You're the only one who actually ends it with, oh, what about you? What did you think, Pierre? Thank you for asking. I appreciate the thought. And I liked it quite a bit as well. I thought it was an interesting take that is oddly still very relevant. Obviously the part that it's nuclear tests that cause what's going on is maybe the one part that's kind of dated, because it's specific to, it's the middle of the Cold War, and this came out a year before the Cuban Missile Crisis. This is where we are in time.
This is still peak. It was interesting to watch it from the perspective of the British, because it's a British movie, right?
Yeah. There's like one or two American characters, but it's a British movie.
Yeah, and I thought that was kind of an interesting thing, because they're very much just in the middle of this, fight that's going on between two other countries or two other nations that keep testing nuclear weapons.
Yeah,
and
obviously.
It's an interesting perspective to see it from them.
Yeah, obviously very much more aligned with one and the other, but yeah, the idea that the UK in and of itself was not testing nuclear weapons. They were not part of that arms race in and of themselves. Although clearly we're still opposed to the Soviet Union, and as was a lot of Western Europe. But
yeah,
that's an interesting perspective as well. The idea that they're not even involved in what causes everything. It's just kind of like, hey, these two.
A lot of it seems very removed from what the actual events are.
Yeah.
Which I think helps with, of course it helps budget wise, because you don't have to film any like bombs going off, any like you don't have to use any stock footage of mushroom clouds or anything like that. It's just because it's not even that it's sorry about the train.
Yeah, Tara, what's all these trains happening outside your house?
I know. I live next to a railroad track. Really, really sorry.
Sort that shit.
Because it's not only removed in the sense that it's taking place in the UK, who isn't involved at all with the bombs that are going off, but it's also taking place in like a newspaper business for the most part. And so it's not like a movie about politicians discussing what's going on, or scientists even. It's just journalists trying to figure out what's going on.
Yeah,
I thought that was kind of a neat perspective.
There's several points in the movie where like they're kind of assuming that the government knows more than we know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really interesting. As Tara looks like she's in the day the Earth caught fire right now. It's so bright orange.
It does. It starts off very red, huh?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. But like, so it puts them kind of in the situation with the audience where it feels like, yeah, they're kind of on the front lines of us finding out things, but they're still very much far removed from everything that's going on. And certainly, I think the reasons why this movie's still relevant is so much of what it's talking about is climate change, even though the reasons for climate change in the movie are different to what we would be talking about now. It still feels like, you know, it's something that people ignored, people didn't care about it until it actually started happening, and even then people are kind of denying it for a while in the movie.
Yeah.
And then the idea of the press kind of getting to the truth and like exposing what's being hidden from everyone, you know, there's a lot of things in here that are still very relevant thematically.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yes. Where's that white bit of paper, Tara? I'm blinded by orange right now.
Okay, I'll fix it.
You're on fire. And that's not a compliment. It's just you look like you're on fire.
I know.
Spontaneous combustion. You have to get a little handle. You have to get like a white bit of card with a little handle. You can just hold it up every time it goes off. So no, I liked it quite a bit. It's not perfect. There's some I think nitpicks here or there. The romance itself maybe is the one thing that feels a little bit oddly dated in some ways.
It does, but there's also, I don't know if it's because it's a British movie. Does it not have to abide by the Hays Code?
Oh,
are you familiar with it?
Not exactly, but I know exactly what scene you're talking about. There's a scene in this where it's not even that raunchy by today's standards, but it does it was showing more skin than I expect from a 60s movie.
Yeah, there's a lot of moments where I'm like, are we going to see the boobs?
Yeah. I think rules were maybe a bit more lax in the UK for this kind of thing. And it's funny because
I guess it's only American films or Hollywood that had to abide by it, because I think they definitely broke some. There was
definitely a rule at one point, right? And I don't know if this was just the US, but like on sitcoms, like married couples would always have two single beds. They would never have the same bed.
Yeah.
That was one of the weird elements. But
and violence too, like you couldn't show any kind of violence. Not that there was any in this, but like the Hays Code just kind of neutered everything when it came to movies and TV.
Yeah, before the hard R rating became a thing. No, as much as I'd say the romance is a little bit dated in some ways, I actually do think they oddly have a good kind of like back and forth on the dialogue.
I think so too. Although I'm up and down on the dialogue. I think I like all the dialogue from the female lead. I like her a lot, actually. I think she's a really strong woman, especially for this time. She's very capable. I think it's also interesting that they show like our lead guy is a divorced dad. It's not something you usually see for movies at this time. It's an interesting character choice.
She even references a one-night stand at one point.
Right.
Which I don't expect from this time period. And it's not even like it's not even like she's having them. She just says, "Oh, I don't like one night stands," and I'm like, I don't think I've ever heard a character in a 60s movie say that. Like, just say that phrase.
Yeah, and this is like early 60s, so it's still, from that same generation of 50s films that we've been watching too.
Yeah.
It just seems out of place, but it's kind of refreshing. Like, I think the dialogue's really smartly written. But I do have a little bit of a hard time keeping up with it. Like they go real fast in this movie.
They do talk fast in this movie, especially when in the newsroom. There's a lot of like chatter going back and forth.
Yeah,
Um,
a lot. I found myself getting a little bit lost. Like, ooh, I should probably rewind, make sure I picked up what they, just in case I didn't skip something important.
did you have subtitles as an option?
No, I refuse.
You refuse subtitles. Okay. No, I mean dialogue's really fast and furious. It's very, quite snappy, very witty. There's a lot of jokes, like like early on examples. He kind of meets the love interest. Let's get my names up here so I can see them. Jeannie. He meets the love interest initially because he phones the Met office, where she works, the government building, and she's the one on the switchboard. But it's not her job. She's just kind of filling in because other people are off sick or whatever, and he gets kind of like cross with her and like basically says, if you don't want to connect me to the person that I want, because he's trying to like talk to some head honcho in charge. He's like, you can go jump in a pool or something like that. And he meets her actually at the building when he kind of sneaks in and tries to talk to the big boss. And he's kind of flirting with her, he's kind of taking it back with her, and she seems to kind of like him. They've got a bit of chemistry. And then he mentions his name because he said the name on the phone before, and she just turns around and slaps him.
Yeah. She says, I have something else for you too, and smacks him. It was great.
Yeah. I'm not going to lie, I was half expecting a knee to the balls. I really was.
Yeah, I like their back and forth a lot. I thought their relationship was pretty good, especially in the movies that we've watched so far. We haven't gotten any kind of good relationship, so this is the first one, I think.
There was some healthy relationships in High Life. How dare you?
Between the scientist and the chair, or
yeah, that was a romance for the ages. I felt passion in that scene.
You're not wrong.
Well, I guess the other thing here is that I feel like most movies from this time period, or certainly before this time period, I guess it was kind of changing because like Psycho, it was a year before, right? So Psycho's another example where it did something in relationships that were different from the time. But like one of the criticisms I always have of old movies, and like I often second guess myself and think, was this like a thing in real life, or is it just because movies had to do it this way, where couples would meet and like they'd want to get married within like a day or two, like the guy would propose and it'd be like, oh, we're getting married because we like each other, like within a day. Whereas this arguably, like, it just they see each other a couple of times. She's making but I don't want to get the spoilers yet, but it just kind of ends with like a first sex encounter essentially, and then the relationship keeps kind of developing, but there's no like weird talks of marriage. There's no like, oh, we're committing to each other.
It feels very natural too. I think it's really well done. Yeah,
it feels like a relatively, I would say modern exactly, but it feels like a fairly down to earth. Like I'm like, oh, I kind of buy this is what relationships maybe were kind of like in 1961. Like,
right.
It feels a bit more, like that. As Tara continues to have technical difficulties with the camera, so if you're watching the video version, just bear with us that she has to keep resetting it.
If you're listening to the audio, again, sorry about all the trains.
Yeah.
They really have somewhere to be tonight.
Apparently so. I'll be honest, I kind of stopped noticing them after a while. They kind of just blend in.
Yeah. I mean, I've lived here for a couple of years now, and the first few weeks I didn't sleep very much, but I got used to it too.
Yeah. They just kind of blend in after a while. So, so I guess, I mean, I think the dating elements of the relationship for me are just down to, I guess just some of the setup. Like there's just a couple of moments where he kind of insists himself into her area, like, he runs into her at like the park or whatever, at one point, and kind of just sort of insists on talking to her, and then kind of ends up at her place after that. And then there's a moment where he ends up back at her place after leaving, and while it's kind of believable that it's the only place he could find given what the context of the movie, it still feels kind of weird. Like if I was her, I'd be like, oh, this was the only place you could go, you had to come back to my place.
Well, she kind of brings that up too.
Yeah.
Oh, you just happened to be here, huh? Okay.
Yeah. But like, minor things, like the more we've talked about it, the more I'm actually kind of more positive on the romance, to be honest.
Yeah, I was pretty positive about it. For the most part, I thought that was one of the stronger parts of the film.
Yeah, and the same we're talking about for the record about the like more skin than I'm used to in a movie from this era is she's getting out of a bath. She's been in the bath, and there's a shot from behind where she's topless, and she then puts like a towel around her neck and is covering her breast. But like,
I saw some side boob.
Yeah, I don't expect that.
Wasn't expecting it. That's all.
Yeah. It's like fair enough, and then I'll save that for spoilers. But there's a scene later on where she was in a scene with other characters, and she's clearly naked in the scene, and it's kind of got a menacing tinge to it because of that. And again, it's not something I expect in a movie from 1961. Now, 1971's a different story. Like, there's a whole revolution in cinema before we get to the 70s, but weird in that sense. But yeah, the actual plot is also really interesting, especially as it goes along, because I was actually a bit worried that I'd picked this movie for the first like 20-30 minutes. Outside of the opening, which kind of teases where we're going, I was like, is this a sci-fi movie? Like, I'm not even sure. Like it wasn't until like the climate really started to change, I was like, okay, now we're getting to sci-fi territory now.
Yeah.
But it's just,
I think the actual like the events that happened that trigger it is also pretty science fiction. So you're good.
Yeah, in terms of like, this causes this, sure. Because up until a point, you could almost just read it as a fictional journalist investigation movie, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be sci-fi. It's just, like if you just say, okay, something happens where they're testing nukes and the journalists are trying to investigate what's going on, like that could just be a movie that's kind of like, okay, we're taking what's happening in the world and we're making a plot out of it, right?
Right. It's almost a war film too, like a Cold War film.
Yeah. But
it avoids it.
Yeah, there's definitely parallels that I can bring to other movies actually, but I can only do once we get spoilers. But
sure.
But I will say the character's arc is pretty good. He has no will to live basically at the start of the movie, and there's this tinge of irony that by the time like he might not be able to live is when he actually wants to live. So
yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's a parallel to humanity also.
It is. And I think the relationship both with Jeannie, but also the relationship with Bill, who's his like friend who works at the paper as well, who's always kind of covering for him.
Right.
Because
he holds a little bit of resentment to him as well.
Yeah.
It's a realistic dynamic between the two of them. I really like the dialogue as well.
Yeah, because you always get this feeling that Bill wants him to succeed, like he's rooting for him to get out of this slump and become like who he was.
Yeah, he's hard on him.
Yeah, he's hard on him. There's a moment at one point early in the film where the editor, the boss, kind of like gives Pete some shit, and Bill kind of looks up at him with this glance of like he's hoping that he'll say something, and he doesn't, and he kind of like looks disappointed, and I'm like, like the three core characters that we deal with, which are these three, are handled pretty well, I think. And I think there's a neat thing as well. Even just the idea that he's got a son that he sees. We have a couple of scenes where he's with his son when he gets to see him, and I think there's almost a dark tinge to this movie that he doesn't have the will to live at the start, even though he has this son. Like like the son's not enough. Like you expect it to be, but it's not, and it's kind of like this is, if you really think about it, this is darker than most movies are for this time period as well, and how it's tackling this kind of thing.
And the complaints that he brings up about his son is that he's being raised too well by his new stepdad and his mom, of course, that they're putting him in the best schools and he'll never have a hard life like he did. So he's worried that his son is going to grow up to be a person that he hates.
Yeah. And even the idea that he's got a nanny. He's got a nanny now. Yeah. I don't even see my ex-wife as the nanny drops him off.
Yeah.
No, it's
I like it. It seems very modern, like you said. Like these characters feel very modern, and I think it just has to do with the fact that we watch, even when we watch The Twilight Zone, these characters that we are seeing from the 50s they seem very much like they're from another time.
Yeah, I swear that if you go over just by movies, like before the 70s, people didn't get divorced.
I thought it was very unusual to see a divorced man as a main character from a movie of this time.
Yeah, it stuck out to me. So, but no, it's good. So strong characters is a good thing, especially as much as we're talking about these bigger ideas of the climate changing and what's happened to the earth. Like, so much of it is like it's rooted in the characters and how it affects them.
Yeah, well, it's very low budget. And so, and because you're seeing it from, a distance, everything that's happening, all these big things that are happening, they're sort of getting the effects of it, but you don't see any of the causes because that would be something you need a budget for. So because it's a very intimate movie with these characters, so long as they're strong, I think the movie works because of it.
I wonder if it's. Do you think it's purely down to budget, or do you think it's just partly that some of the things we're talking about, like they just couldn't pull off in 1961?
That could be it too.
You know,
I mean, I thought I saw some stock footage, but
I think there is when they're showing some stuff from around the world because it's fairly impressive though. There is a couple of big set pieces actually in terms of really simple ideas that create like tension in a way, which we'll get into.
I agree.
But I guess we're about to ready to jump into spoilers now, and dive into it. So full spoilers from this point on for the day the Earth caught fire. So yeah, once the climate stuff starts rolling in, because like obviously it's getting warmer and warmer, right? And they're talking about it. What was really cracking me up is this is obviously set in London, and they're using Fahrenheit, and I was like confused. I was like, no, no, Celsius. I don't know what 90 degrees means. I don't know what 90 degrees feels like.
That was kind of striking.
Yeah.
I guess because they were trying to make it a Hollywood movie, so they have to.
Oh no! I think it used to be Fahrenheit. It's not that they were doing.
Okay.
I think it would just at some point in the UK changed from Fahrenheit to Celsius.
Mm.
I don't know when that was exactly, because even the money they're using is different. Like I don't understand the money they're using, because at one point he's like, "Oh, this coat costs 4 shillings or something." I don't know what it's called. I don't know what a shilling is. And sixpence.
Yeah, I don't know.
A shilling and sixpence. I don't know what this currency is. God damn.
Yeah, so some of it was very British. Like when the movie opens, well, after we get done with the red effect, which was kind of a cool thing to do for a black and white movie, is that it opens to let you know that the Earth is really, really hot right now. Instead of black and white, it's like a dark red and a light red.
Yeah, it's tinted.
I thought that was kind of cool, but a lot of the dialogue was just so heavy. Like it was just constant back and forth and people talking on top of each other and so fast. There's a pretty funny scene where I thought it was funny, and it was a great example of how fast they're talking, is when they find a little girl who's lost. Shit.
Yeah, you've had that face since the start of that whole speech, and I've just been sitting here smirking to myself about it.
God damn this camera. All right.
Little girl.
I don't know what to do. Anyway.
Find a little girl.
Yeah, so they find a little girl, and they immediately are like, "What's your name? Who are you? Where are your parents? Are you here with somebody?" She's not talking. Like you're not giving her any time to answer a question. But the movie just starts off pretty heavy that way, just so dialogue heavy. I'm like, okay, I need to keep up.
You get in the rhythm of it, I think.
You do. Like by the end of it, I was good. But yeah, in the beginning, it was kind of a rough start.
Yeah. So yeah, it's just like 90 plus degrees Fahrenheit. It's getting warmer and warmer, and it's because it's actually Bill who has the idea that like maybe the explosions, because basically there's one nuke they know of, and then they find out that there was also a rival nuke, and they were both tested within minutes of each other. And his theory,
one in America, one in Siberia.
Yeah, and his theory is that it's tilted the Earth, right? So the equator's changed, so the climates are changing and shifting. So some places will become really warm now, other places will basically enter new ice ages, and that's his theory. And we kind of see that, and all the weather effect does seem to get worse along the angle, like the axis that he said that he thought it tilted on.
Right.
But the first big effect though is that everyone's enjoying the warm weather, and this like mysterious mist comes in and completely covers the country in this mist. But it only goes up to about 4 stories high, and it's really thick. No one can see through it. And what I liked about this is like for the next like 15-20 minutes of the movie, it's this mechanical thing where we set up these new rules where no one can see anything, and like cars are in chaos, people are like walking through the streets trying to see where they're going.
Yeah, you could tell it's really devastating the area. Just everybody is lost. Nobody knows where they are. People who live there don't know what building they're next to.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a really cool cheap effect that I thought was used really well.
Yeah, and people at the paper, like there's hardly anyone there because no one can get into work. Some the people who are there can't get home. Like it's just not safe
Mhm.
to travel. And and this is actually the part of the movie where he ends up because he's at her apartment and then he ends up going back later because he just can't find his way anywhere else, which leads to him sleeping in the bathroom, which leads to the sex scene. Well, I say sex scene. They start to have sex. It cuts away. Um,
Yeah.
and so it does these things mechanically, and then it's actually that same night. There's like a typhoon. Essentially, there's cars blowing over. There's all sorts of things, and it's like absolute chaos. And Tara's so interested in what I'm saying right now. If you're watching the video, it's just like it started to play with these things, and I'm like, okay, it's really doing stuff with all these concepts now. It's really introducing these different climates where, and then there's some montages of like floods in different parts of the world. There's forest fires, and that was making me think of like the wildfires from last year. I was like, oh yeah, like we're literally going through this,
Yeah.
like right now. And then of course the big revelation in the plot is that it's not just tilted the Earth; it's actually thrown it off its orbit, and
Right.
we're getting closer to the sun. And we've got about
Right.
4 months until we're too close, and then we're all going to burn up and die.
Right. So at first they're like, we'll get used to it. We're British. We're used to weather being weird or something. We're resilient. We can adapt to this. And then eventually it's like, oh no, actually we're all going to die in a period of, I think the one guy Bill estimates 4 months before everybody burns up. So they come up with a big plan to I don't know if you want to get into the end already, but like,
yeah, we can talk about that and go back to the moments we want to talk about.
yeah, the big plan is in order to fix it, is that they're going to set off 4 nukes in a certain area to try to push the Earth back into a livable rotation again, or to move it back into an orbit that is at least it's at least livable. But it's all theory, and we don't know if it's going to work.
Yeah.
And I think what's great about the movie is that it ends with 2 newspaper headlines, one where it worked and one where it doesn't, and we don't know if it works.
Yeah,
I thought that was
you say this,
ballsy.
they're on like they're in the printing press room, and it's like they don't know which one they're printing yet. It's not like
Right.
we're given like 2 options. It's like they literally have 2 front covers, 2 newspaper headlines. They're ready to publish, and they're waiting for the response after they've set off these bombs. And we just get like a speech. The end of the article that Pete's dictating in this part of the timeline, just rounds out the movie, and we never get to find out. And one of the elements that made me think of all this stuff was that all the governments of the world have agreed that this is because we have to do something, or we're all going to die.
Yeah.
So they're going to set off these 2 bombs, and there's like a wisecrack from Bill. He's like, oh, it only took the world like dying to get everyone to work together, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, this is kind of like the theory behind Watchmen or the other things where it's not until certain death where everyone goes, shit, we should probably work together and not, because obviously like the message of the movie, at least in part, is quite obvious. It's like that this conflict's going to lead to our demise. If it's not because we're actually bombing each other, it's because it'll lead to it through everything else.
It's unintentional consequences.
Yeah.
Of something else, right? Like they were originally they developed these weapons of mass destruction in order to do that, in order to wipe out parts of humanity so that they could win wars or be the most powerful. But it's the unintentional consequence of, oh, actually, this is a doomsday device, and we do have more power than we probably should have now. And because of that, we've doomed all of humanity. And that is what unites everybody in order to try to fix it. But I think that's a pretty powerful message. And I like that they bring up, I think it's Bill who says it. He said that mankind has been poisoning itself for years with a smile on its face. It's kind of a neat parallel to climate change now. Of course, we've known for almost 100 years that the world is getting warmer, and it's probably mankind that's doing it. We know now definitely it is. But it's the difference between the slow moving.
Already see the angry comments saying, "We know now. We know."
Are there still people who do angry comments about that? Yeah.
We've not had any, but like they exist. Those people exist.
Okay. Well,
Your stupid president denies it exists.
yeah, it's true. I don't know if he really believes that,
That
but he
okay?
definitely says it.
That freeze frame right there is the photo you put up on the news when someone's like died, like been murdered, and it's like Tara, age blah blah blah, has been found
Thank you.
dead. I censored the age.
Thank you. Yeah, I noticed. Come on, make me look like a human. All right, it's not gonna work.
You're asking too much of it.
I know my computer. It sucks.
What are we talking about there? Oh, yeah, everyone has
Climate
to come
change,
together.
but like
Yeah,
climate change, like the idea, like this movie is works and it's so shocking because it's showing you everything happening at a rapid speed. Like within a year, the effects of climate change, the full effects are going to destroy humanity. Whereas now we've been dealing with it over 100 years, and because it's slow moving, we're not there yet. We're not ready to. For some reason, we're not there at that place to say, yeah, we need to do something about
yeah,
it.
we're not in panic mode yet. Yeah. Um,
Right.
no, I mean, like, it's actually kind of shocking how relevant this still is. This is a trend because Day of the Earth stood still. Obviously, coincidence that they're both Day of the Earth something, but
Yeah.
again, also shockingly relevant for different reasons. And again, both about the world coming together and not, I mean, if I held they're both about nuclear bombs in a lot of ways. So
Hmm.
they're definitely both of that era. But the weird thing is if you take out the nuclear bomb part, everything else still is relevant today.
Uh, yeah, it
Like
really is.
everything in both movies is still completely relevant. Is all you have to do is remove the nuclear bomb part, and ultimately
Hmm.
that's just. I mean, obviously it was picked at the time because it was like a very relevant like buzzword. It was a very relevant topic. It was what was on everyone's minds. It was the fear of that specifically. But
Yeah.
ultimately, the nuclear bombs in both movies are just the MacGuffin. You take those out, and everything that's about, everything that's talking about humanity and why we've led to this point and why we ignore it,
Yeah.
all of that still works. All of it's still valid and is relevant today. It is absolutely terrifying.
It's yeah, it's stupid. It's stupid that we have we've not only known of the problem, but we have had answers. They're just hard answers to implement. It's hard for
Mhm.
people to accept. So, and to know that it's been around for so long, it is very defeating
Mm.
in a way. It's like maybe we are just going to kill each other.
Maybe we are. Maybe we are.
Hmm.
Like, and everyone coming together, of course, and like finally having the will to do what they need to survive mirrors the main character's arc because, like we said, he starts off not really having the will to live, but by the end, he does want to live. He's scared of dying.
Hmm.
Whereas at the start, he doesn't really care, and over the course of the film, he gets over his alcoholism and he wants to write again. But it takes time. It takes time to get there.
Yeah.
Um,
I like that the movie shows other effects of a global disaster, like having to set up showers and water that
mm,
everyone can use in a public location, and what that really would look like. Like it would be chaotic.
that's
And
another minor thing. They kind of like he notices they're setting up these big tanks in the park, and he's like, "Hey, I think they're
mhm.
going to shut off the water like to people's houses. I think it's going to be no. You have to go there and get your rationed amount
Yeah, and people are getting sick because they have to share water sources, water supplies. People are getting sick. Disease is becoming
from
a
from
big thing,
from
and
black market water as well."
yeah,
Yeah, that was one of the plot points that came up. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and people starting to riot. People were just accepting that the world was ending and just rioting. That led to that really dark scene in the apartment.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that. I mean, I think the movie does a good job of showing all these different elements, and I think one of the sort of sections of the movie that really kind of mirrors the again you talked about how the consequences that are affected the world are unintentional.
Hmm.
I think another example of that in the movie for the characters is that Junie overhears the part about the Earth's been knocked out of orbit, uh, and
Mm-hmm.
it's heading towards the Earth, or maybe it's just a tilted. Whatever the big revelation is at that point in the movie, she hears about it at her job, and tells Pete, and she's like, "This has to be off the record. You can't talk about this. I just need to tell someone because it's terrifying." And he immediately goes and puts it in the paper. He immediately goes and tells his editor. They confirm it. They confront, people at the head office and whatnot, and they put it out. And it causes everyone to panic. It causes the real chaos. And you actually kind of agree with them. This had to go out there. People need to find out about this.
No.
Yeah. But she gets arrested for leaking this information, and it's this unintended consequence where she is like treated as this victim. At one point, you see like a newspaper headline that says "Savior or traitor." And it's like people are like harassing her. People are looking at her this way. She spends a couple of weeks in like essentially a detention center because of this.
Yeah.
And he wants to apologize. He wants to make up for it. And even his editor says, "Hey, she won't get a job back there, but we'll give her a job. Like I'm happy to hire her." Like it's her, we kind of did get her you screwed out of a job here, but like and it almost feels like it's building up to this confrontation when she does start working there. But as soon as he goes into the library room where she's working, they basically just immediately, like, it all falls away and they embrace. It doesn't matter anymore. And I think it's kind of mirroring the unintended consequence of like of the nukes themselves, and the idea that they caused all this unintentionally. I think it's foreshadowing the idea that they the solution is going to also have to be something drastic that will have unintended consequences, but has to happen.
Yeah, I don't think there is returning to normal after something like that. Like they have a possible solution of trying to get something that resembles normal back again, but I think this movie does a really good job of showing you that there is no going back now. Like, we've done too much. And the only thing we can try to do is survive and do the best that we can. But, this is something we made this bed, Now we have to lay in it. It's a harsh lesson.
Yeah. And I just like the idea that some scientists have figured out when the Earth will be rotated in the right way so that setting off the bombs will knock it back into an orbit.
Yeah. That part seems very science fiction, but
it's very science fiction.
Yeah.
I like the montages of everything everywhere else. You see all this flooding and like animals dying and forest fires and just all the chaos. And I'm sure this is where some of it will be stock footage. They didn't necessarily film all this, but it's effective in the movie. Like it actually like adds this tone to it. And I like how when
things get real dire.
These bombs are going off at the end and the countdown's happening. Our three main characters are together in the bar across the street that they've hung out around a few times, and they just listen to it together. They listen to the countdown.
Yeah, and it's I like that it's a montage. I know. I'm on the struggle bus here.
Yeah.
I like that it's a montage of around the world. It's a countdown from different places, different recognizable places around the world. So, and in different languages.
Yeah, I like that the countdown switches languages for each number when it cuts to to Moscow. Here's number 7 in Russian. Cuts to France. Here's number 6 in French, kind of thing.
It's letting you know that this is everybody in the world is going through this at the same time. It's not just in this isolated area.
Yeah, it's completely global. So no, it feels big, and I think one of my things about low budget sci-fi that I really love is you make it feel big because of the ideas. Even if your movie is just a group of people in a room, and a lot of Twilight Zones like that, where it's just people talking, and it's the ideas that make it feel big. And when that's handled well, when they pull that off, I love how the camera's freezing now. We are still fixing it with the paper. It's great.
I'm just gonna let it be.
Yeah, God, that's freezing. Anyway. So no, it's a really well done movie. I actually like. I'm glad I picked this. I'm glad we watched this because
me too.
I think the characters are all likable. They go through an interesting arc. You're like, and I think Pete's kind of a dick to begin with, but he's kind of he's redeemed almost in association with Bill, because Bill knows who he can be, and he's trying to make him be that better person. And his frustration when he's not gives us an insight into, okay, maybe we should be rooting for him. And he gets a little bit better when he's with Jeannie, because he kind of like gets a little bit flirty, and he's trying to be more charming. He's he's still
trying to better himself.
Yeah.
She says specifically, "I like you sober," and
Yeah.
and he puts the alcohol away.
Yeah, he does.
Mm-hmm.
So no, it's just the kid wants to move into the ghost train. Actually, that was like one of the old weird lines of dialogue. Like, he wants to move into the ghost train and live there if the rent's good. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, this movie has a lot of quips.
Actually, it does have a lot of quips. If I have one kind of like logistical complaint, is that the carnival is operating like a day after a typhoon that we clearly saw was knocking over cars and shit.
Yeah, and the Ferris wheel's totally fine. I didn't buy that.
Yeah, bullshit. Yeah. That Ferris wheel, if it's not on the ground, they've got that closed off to make sure it's 100% safe. Like they ain't running that. But you know, that's a minor quibble. Like whatever. Like we can get over that. You mentioned the rioting earlier, though. We should talk about that. And it's like a happy riot. It's like a hippie riot. Like they're all like just happy and drunk and just like dancing and singing and.
Yeah, they got like a marching band thing going on.
Yeah, and when it's just out in the street, you think, okay, fine.
People are just trying to have a good time because the world's ending. I get it.
Outside of flipping the car over, yeah, it's mostly just kind of a parade. But then he goes into Jeannie's apartment building to try and find her, and he runs upstairs, and there's people that have like kicked in the door, and she's in a bath, and these characters are around her, just kind of like mocking her and pouring water on her and that kind of thing. But she is naked in this scene, and even though there's no implication they were going to do anything, you know, sexual or anything like that, it still feels like they broke into your house and are mocking you while you're sitting there naked. How vulnerable could you possibly feel in that scenario?
It is. It makes it pretty perverse because of that, which was something I didn't expect at all.
Yeah, and Pete comes in and like kind of punches a couple of them out and barricades the door. I guess like it's a really well effective scene because I care about what's going on. It's one of the points in the movie where I realized I cared about the characters because I like, oh no, is she okay? Like, are the people in the house? And they know who she is. She's been kind of made kind of famous because of the papers, because of like she was the one who kind of leaked the information. So they're kind of like blaming her in a weird way.
It's like they have a face to put this event onto now, so they're using her as a tool for that. It's just an outlet when she really has nothing to do with anything other than trying to tell the people what's really good. Well, she even really didn't do that. She just kind of told her boyfriend.
Yeah, I mean, the only critique I can really have is that she's maybe a bit of a damsel in the scene. It's maybe the one sort of dated element of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, she is in a bathtub. Like, it's how much more vulnerable can you be?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I mean, this is the thing though. Sometimes, there's not. It's not to say that you can never have a damsel per se, and I think this one's quite effective because if you actually care about the character and you want to make sure she's okay, then the movie's done a good enough job that it doesn't necessarily matter. Like, but I think it's worth pointing out. But it does also work in the other side of things where. This is kind of showing that he has a will to live now because he shows up and he's desperate to get to her and he punches them out. Like, he comes in kind of guns blazing, essentially.
He kind of murders somebody too.
Yeah, because the one guy falls down the elevator shaft.
Yeah. That was a surprise.
Yeah. I mean... to be fair, he punches the guy inside the apartment. The guy just kind of stumbles out and keeps stumbling backwards until he falls in the elevator shaft. But
also, and when they attacked him, they threw him into the window, and he almost fell out. So
that's true. Yeah.
Kind of retribution.
Yeah. It was a fair kill. It was a fair kill. It wasn't an intentional murder by any means, so we can live with it. But
we can live with our hero doing it.
But yeah, this movie, this scene really sets up like the chaos that we're in now, and made me realize that I cared about the characters. The other scene that made me care about the characters as well was when Jeannie first goes to the newspaper office and Bill is kind of showing her around, and it's the first time I've seen these two characters interact because it's either been him and Pete or her and Pete, right? So it's always been one of the pairs. And this like completing the triangle, it was like, oh, he's nice to her as well, and like. Him like sticking up for Pete, like, hey, don't be too mad at Pete. Like, it had to happen. Any newspaper man would have done the same thing. Like, it had to happen.
Yeah. Don't take it personally.
Yeah. But he's kind of trying to root for him, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, like even if Pete can be a bit of a dick at times, like I care about these two a bit more.
Hmm.
So no, but the movie's very much about him overcoming his dickishness, essentially.
Yeah, and we're left with him walking down the middle of a road just by himself in the red,
Yep,
the red screen.
sweating buckets, and he finishes his speech being hopeful that things will be fixed, but no one knows, and we leave the
Yeah.
film in an ambiguous ending where maybe we could fix it, and maybe we can't, but we have to have the will to try, and I think that's the message more than anything else.
Yeah.
So
I really enjoyed this movie. And I'm surprised I've never heard of it.
yeah, well, I mean, yeah, maybe you should let me pick the movies more often, since seemingly I'm good at it.
You're right. My movies so far have not been all that great. Although I did suggest The Day the Earth Stood Still as our first one.
Did you? I actually don't remember who suggested that, so but I'll take your word for it. I'll take your word for it.
Yeah, it was me. I'll take the credit for the 10 out of 10.
Well, since you mentioned ratings,
Would you like me to rate this one then?
yeah, you
Okay.
rate it.
Yeah, this movie was very much a surprise. I think I enjoy it more even after our discussion about it too. There were some things about it that I wouldn't call them flaws. They're just choices, creative choices.
That image
gosh.
there is Tara just like farted, but some poop came out and she wasn't expecting it, so she's like,
No, that's me about to belt into song.
nah. That was, oh no, that was disgusting. Look, that's what that was.
No way. My eyes would be way wider if that were the case. I know what my face looks like when I poop.
Who looks at a mirror when they poop?
Well, surprise poops, I know well. Don't ask me why.
Out of illness at some point, I assume. Don't have to get into it. It's fine. Don't have to get into it.
That's personal.
You've heard it here first, though. Tara has just confirmed that she does in fact poop. So you can note that down in your dossier.
Multiple times a day.
But for the record, since we're on equal
All that
footing,
fiber.
I will also confirm that I do in fact poop.
What? I don't want to know that.
Of course I poop.
You're ruining my perfect image of you.
Well, if the perfect image of me included not pooping, then I may as well shatter it now. What other unrealistic things are in my perfect image?
I'll get back to you.
Yeah. If it's rock hard abs, I got some disappointing news for you. What are you rating the movie?
Yeah, so I really did enjoy this movie. I think it works well with the message that it's doing. I think it's a surprisingly modern film that we've discussed for the time that it came out. The issues I have with it might just be my own fault for not understanding British. But I think I'm going to give it a 9. I think it's a 9. Good movie. Good job.
Yeah. You know, I'm trying to think of a reason to go lower, and I don't think I can. Because, like, I think it works on multiple levels. I think it works. There's definitely some uplifting elements in the press side of things where the editor's like, "Hey, this is really doom and gloom. Try and keep the message in the text, optimistic. Try and keep it like, no, we can maybe find a solution. We can find a hope." Try and keep it. We don't want to cause panic. That's not the purpose of what we're doing.
Yeah, that was an interesting angle for the media. I liked it too.
I like that. I like the 3 core characters. I like the message. I like the over, like, because the first 30-40 minutes is fairly light because like the real effects haven't started yet and the characters aren't aware of how bad things are. Right. Once that like fog rolls in and that typhoon hits and it starts to really ramp up, it does a really good job of like feeling kind of like, wait, yeah, this might be hopeless. We might be screwed. Like, shit.
Yeah, I think a lot of the things that don't work in the movie are just an effect of its own budget and the time it was released, and I don't think I can hold it against it for that.
No, it uses its money well, I think. And it's, it's shot 2:35:1. It's generally quite a nice image. I think because version I watched at least came up at the start saying BFI, remastered kind of thing.
Oh yeah, mine too.
Yeah. Which, for anyone who doesn't know, is the British Film Institute, just for the record. But no, very nice. So I'm also going to give it a 9 out of 10.
All right,
Like that.
good movie.
Yeah, because obviously we started with a 10 out of 10, and then since then it's been kind of wavering in the middle to mediocre kind of levels, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad we got another.
I was ready to be positive again. I think I've been a bit negative for a little while, for a few weeks. So
yeah, you've been a downer.
I'm glad we got a good one in.
Yeah, such a downer recently.
I know, man.
We try to talk about all sorts of things, and you've been like, oh.
I don't like that.
What is this dildo scene? Oh, what's it saying? What's it saying about the human condition? Oh.
Ooh, that was a weird one.
It's saying that Juliette Binoche really likes to get it. This is what it's saying.
Yeah, how Julia Binoche got her groove back.
There's such a disapproving look frozen on the screen there for a second. It's like, oh,
I hate this. I hate that my camera's doing this.
Well, it's actually not a camera.
Too. I got to do something about it.
I think it's more likely to be Skype than the camera that's doing it. I don't think it's the camera.
Okay.
It's Skype that's being the problem, and I don't know why. It's weird, but
I promise viewers that I'll find a way to fix it.
Well, Tower's actually moving house relatively soon, so there'll be like a whole new place with new internet, so it should hopefully be much smoother after.
New internet. I'll get a new computer.
You don't have to,
or at least borrow one.
Yeah, you don't have to promise a new computer. You don't have to do that. You have to do it.
Well, I'll be able to borrow one because right now it's just me, but soon that'll be remedied.
That'll be remedied. Yes. Tower's getting married. She's moving in with her husband.
No.
He's a big butch
Claire's
fella.
Not doing that again.
He's a big butch fella named Chad. He's delightful.
Yeah.
I've met him.
Tell me more about my future.
Chad's favorite film is A Nightmare Before Christmas, and he.
I hate this guy so much. I give this marriage 2 months.
He's a Pisces. And because
I care about that.
He likes long walks on the beach. He thinks David Lynch films are too artsy. He doesn't get them. He thinks only lame people like them. And he thinks Predator's a dumb movie about macho people.
God, he is just ticking all the boxes. I love how you know so much about me.
Yeah, what people don't realize is that everything I said there, I said knowing exactly that Tara would disagree with every single one of them.
I do also enjoy long walks on the beach.
Okay, that was just a generic one that people say when they're talking about things.
And I'll be moving to a beach soon.
All right. Yeah. So that has been Day the Earth Caught Fire. Freudian slip.
They are awfully close.
If you, there's a bonus section coming up.
They're so close, it has to be intentional.
Yeah, there's a bonus section coming up after I do my plugs here, so stick around for that. But if you did have seen the movie before, you can comment in the comments below what you think of the movie and tell us what you thought of us talking about it. I guess if you want to tell us we're great and stuff like that. I mean, I'm okay about hearing that. You can, of course, support us by liking, subscribing, all that kind of thing. If you give us a review on iTunes or your podcast app of choice, give us a 5-star rating and a review because it helps with them pimping out the podcast. Introduces us to new listeners and new new audience, that would be delightful. You can, of course, support us financially by going over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, where you can support us for as little as $1 per month, and you can do that and get some bonuses. You get a bonus episode of the Ace once per month for your $1, as well as you get the episodes a week early. At the $5 tier, you get to vote on an episode once per month. In fact, our first vote is up right now for next month, so you can, $5 patrons, go and check it out. And if I'm going to promote any other content, I think I usually let you pick, but you always pick either one or two things. You'll pick Twilight Zone because you're on it, or you'll pick Star Trek because you just love Star Trek. So I am going to promote something else. I'm going to say, if you like this show and you would like a horror movie equivalent, myself and Tim, the other T-fuzzer, we do Screams After Midnight, which is a horror movie podcast, very like this one, but we talk about horror movies, and we've been doing it for about 300 episodes, and dare I say, we're adequate.
I think so. I enjoy listening to it.
So check out that. But there you go. Before we go, though, we do have our bonus section to do. We have, of course, the Mystery Science Theater portion of the show, which we, if we have a chance, every week we'll watch an episode of Mystery Science Theater 3000. Tara's a long-time fan. She picks the episodes. Eventually we'll get to one she's not seen. But Tara picked, what she will pronounce incorrectly, might I add. She picked Puma Man.
Puma Man.
Puma Man. And since Tara's camera's frozen for the video people, I am going to instead cover her face here, and I am going to draw Tara on the screen.
Yeah, due to technical difficulties, we get to witness Peter's art.
With a mouse. Just for the record. Just with a mouse.
Can you take off like 20 pounds from me? Thanks.
All right. Okay. So
we watched the Puma Man.
Yes, tell the audience what Puma Man is.
Puma Man is a superhero based in Aztec culture. We know this because there is some kind of Aztec man who, in order to find the Puma Man, because the Puma Man can seemingly fall from great heights without injury. Why am I so angry?
The camera's not working.
Anyway. Seemingly because the Puma Man is capable of surviving a long fall, the way the Aztec man finds the Puma Man is he will throw people out of windows. So we get great montage of defenestration where the Aztec man is trying to find the Puma Man until eventually he does. The main villain is played by what's his name?
Donald Pleasance.
Donald Pleasance, yes, who is very bald in the movie. We know this because the Mike and the bots like to make fun of his baldness. And there's some kind of like golden mask that has technology in it, even though it's from the Aztecs. And if he speaks to people while looking through the mask, he puts them in this trance where he can mind control them. And in the meantime, the Aztec man is training the Puma Man to become his true self and be a savior for humanity, we assume. Yeah, and shenanigans ensue. What did you think of the Puma Man?
Puma Man. Of Puma Man, to say it properly. It's funny. I think the plot's nonsensical. I couldn't tell you what the back half of this movie's about. However, there's some wonderful elements that make it fairly entertaining to watch. One, Puma Man's costume is like a sweater, a cheap cape, and like some jeans. It is like, who thought this looked good? Who thought this was passable? It's baffling.
Well, the belt is where the magic comes from.
And then, yeah, there's the belt. Yes, that's right.
Once he puts the belt on, the costume appears, and he is now the Puma Man, Who, by the way, can fly because pumas are known for their flying.
Exactly, yes. He flies, and the flying effect is terrible. They've basically got stock footage of like buildings behind him that are just kind of swooping past, and he's just kind of like, and he does this thing. He's not like holding a pose like Superman. He looks like he's kind of falling the whole time, just sort of waving his arms around. But
Yeah.
the background footage is like swooping around as if he's moving around really fast, and it's
And like his butt is always in the air. Like it looks like he's being dragged by his underwear.
it's like the apparatus they had to hold him up for the green screen wasn't the correct type to actually make it hold him properly, so it just always looked wrong. It always looked like he would had like his weight was always going to the middle as opposed to like even.
And sometimes sometimes just the backdrops don't make sense physics wise. Like there's a great joke where the Puma Man he picks up a guy that he wants to interrogate and drops him, but he drops at like a 60-degree angle.
So that's gold. And then the other thing that has to be talked about is that, so to test for the Puma Man, because this Aztec guy is looking for who's inherited the power of the Puma Man. He shows up at the guy's work and throws him out of a window. Or they're like 4 or 5 floors up. He throws him out of a window, and then because he survives, he knows he's Puma Man. And I'm like, but if that wasn't Puma Man, you'd have just killed someone.
Right. We get, well, I talked about this before. We get the great montage of just him throwing, or we don't get a montage really. We just get these newspapers saying that somebody was thrown out of a window. So he has been going around murdering people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But he's also sort of a hero.
Yes. Yeah, it's never addressed. It's never addressed that he's been killing people. So it's a really.
So yeah. Anyway, Puma Man, one of my favorites. It's no werewolf, but I started with the bar pretty high with werewolf.
No, Puma Man, like, it's actually very hard to talk about this one because the plot is so nonsensical and I didn't understand much of it that I can't really talk about much of the events that happened outside
There's
of
a love story.
The constant flying effects. There was a love story?
Yeah, because Donald Pleasance takes over the mind of this blonde girl who's also an archaeologist. I don't know what she is. She's studying Aztecs, but they all wear leather when they do.
Yeah. Her and Donald Pleasance are walking around in like dominatrix outfits like the entire time.
Yeah.
It's really weird. And Donald Pleasance never leaves the room. They clearly just like got him like in one room for like a couple of days to shoot all of his stuff, and that was it.
Yeah.
Oh, jeez. It's absolutely fascinating. As a callback to werewolf.
Absolutely fascinating, yeah. Anyway, oh yeah, I really like this one.
Yeah, no, it's just a fun episode of Mystery Science Theater. The movie itself suffers from being front-loaded. I think the first half hour is hilarious.
Yeah.
And then it kind of just divulges into just going around in circles for the rest of it.
They really, like, they have this location spot that's a warehouse, and they really just stay there for way too long.
They do.
It's so boring.
Back and forth.
And they use the same effects over and over again. Like there's an effect of him like fading into a wall, and they keep doing it. Like they keep giving him a reason to fade into a wall again, but it's the same wall.
Yes. I realize I'm frozen for a second here, but don't worry, it's all worth it.
Okay.
It's all worth it.
I look so defeated.
Yeah. Oh, that's the wrong color. I can't use that color. It's not obvious. I realize for the audio people, you're getting none of this. Me drawing a beard in Tara's face is not coming across on the audio version, but I want you to know that I'm Rakerifying Tara.
That's just my mirror universe me.
Evil Peter, evil Tara.
Jay, look all right.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I look like my father.
Oh dear. Yeah, I have nothing else to add. I'm sure, but like, there's the key things that I remember from that movie that I wanted to talk about. It was the Aztec guy throwing him at the window to see if he's Puma Man, and having killed several people doing so.
Mhm.
It's the flying
The great theme
effect,
song.
the costume. Oh god, the theme song. I forgot about the theme song.
Boo, 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 boo.
Which, by the way,
My man, he flies like a moron.
that music comes in at the most inappropriate times.
Agreed.
Like,
Oh, and I love that he can sense danger, except whenever there's danger around.
yes. Like, that music comes into play when there's like these like tense moments that's supposed to be suspenseful. It's like dun 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 dun. Oh god.
I love the part where he gets punched in the face and Tom Sawyer goes, "I sense danger."
Oh, that is a good joke, actually. I do like that joke. I remember that now that you brought it up. Well, Joe, it's funny, actually, when we were watching this, I was getting like really tired towards the end of the movie. The last like 15-20 minutes are kind of a blur.
There's some kind of Aztec god that shows up in a giant Christmas ornament, and they end up at Stonehenge.
Yeah. I remember the Christmas ornament.
Yeah.
Ornament. Yes.
Yeah, aminal.
Oh dear. Yeah. All right. Well, I guess that wraps up this episode of
We
Mr.
did
Science
decide
Theater.
on an episode that we're going to watch next time. So whether or not it's next week or whenever, our next episode that we'll watch, in case people want to know.
Yeah,
we can say it.
it'll probably be next week's
Yeah, I'm sure we'll have
episode.
time.
Yeah. We've kind of scheduled it in.
Yeah. We
So
picked an episode, but I already forgot what it was. Do you remember? Season 5.
I love how you brought it up and then revealed that you'd forgotten what we picked.
I know, I forgot. Season 5. I'll look it up right now.
Oh, this is great podcasting. This is all went to shit. Your camera stopped working.
Oh. It's a Warrior of the Lost World. So it's a Mad Max ripoff.
Oh, that's the one.
Season 5, Episode 2, Warrior of the Lost World. So if anybody who's watching or listening and likes Mystery Science Theater, that's the one we're going to watch next.
Yes, I have high hopes. Werewolf's still top dog. Werewolf's still the one that I've liked the most out of any of them.
Yeah, I think it'll still be top dog. No pun. But after this next one too. But I do like this one. And it's a Joel episode. We haven't watched any Joels.
So there you go. That's the plan for the next Mystery Science Theater. And the plan, if you've stuck around for this, the plan for next week's movie on the Ace, I should have said this before the outro, before the plugs, but next week's movie is going to be The Wandering Earth, which is a new film. It's China's biggest budget film ever that came out this year. And it's on Netflix if you want to check it out yourself. So we're going to do that next week.
And thanks to Pete for having our new t-shirt graphic.
Oh,
amazing.
So good. All right, so that has been us. That has been the Ace, the Atomic Cinema Experiment. Hopefully you had fun with the serious movie conversation and then the stupid Mystery Science Theater conversation and drawing portion of the show. Again, apologies to the audio listeners. I realize you get none of this. Hopefully some of the suggestive elements make it worthwhile. I don't know. But thank you very much for joining us. We love you all loads. Tara, what would you like to say as your final word of the show?
Yum, yum.
That's your outro. You say that again at the end.
That was supposed to be the end. You just cut it there, man.
No, it wasn't. I didn't say my catchphrase.
Oh.
I've got my catchphrase to say.
This is my show now. Look at me. I'm the captain now. Look at my beard. My beard outbeards your beard. I'm the captain now.
Never. That has been the Ace. Thank you very much. Keep watching sci-fi movies, guys. And computer, add salsa.
Yum, yum.